concept of American justice is that no one is above the law. If you're accused of committing a crime, you'll go before a jury of your peers, a pretty random assortment of people from the community who will hear both sides and make a judgment. So imagine what it would be like to show up for jury duty and be informed the man sitting at the defense table, in your case, will be Donald Trump, and that you might be part of the first criminal trial against a former U.S. president ever. That was the scene yesterday in Manhattan as jurors began arriving at a New York courthouse for the case known as the People of New York State versus Donald J. Trump. ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky was in the room for all this. He's outside the courthouse now. Aaron, a lot to get to here. First off, though, what was it like when Trump showed up for this trial?
We've seen him in courtrooms before. Court appearances are now fully woven into his political strategy. So when he left Trump Tower, there was a wave. When he got back, there was the fist bump. We saw him stern-faced, knowing exactly where the cameras were when the photographers were allowed in for a minute at the start before the judge took the bench. But otherwise, the customary bombast that you see in the hallway really subsides. He's a defendant at the defense table, and he was engaged with his lawyers. He occasionally had his eyes closed as if in thought. Sometimes he would tug on the sleeve of his attorney, Todd Blanche, to get his attention if he heard something maybe he wanted his defense attorney to respond to. And at one point, the defense attorney seemed to tap Trump on the arm as if to say, okay, I got it. So he is following along when potential jurors were answering from a 7-page questionnaire. Trump held the questionnaire in one hand and flipped through the pages with the other as the potential jurors went through the responses.
Well, and even before the jurors themselves heard from him, even before the jurors were even being selected and argued over, they had some pretrial hearings that actually people were not necessarily expecting. And this was probably some of the newsiest stuff of the day. I mean, who came out ahead in terms of some of these rulings?
It cut both ways, Brad. On one hand, the prosecutors are going to be allowed to call Karen McDougal, the former Playboy model, who has said that the National Enquirer paid her hush money in order to keep quiet about her alleged sexual encounter with Donald Trump that he denies. But the judge also said prosecutors are limited in what they can do with the Access Hollywood tape, the one on which Trump is heard boasting about grabbing women. The judge said prosecutors can quote from it, but they cannot play the tape from the jury. He said that having the jury hear that tape in Trump's own voice would be extremely prejudicial.
And one of the things we've been talking about so much with this criminal trial is how non-negotiable it is that you be there, right? How much that will eat into the former president's campaign time. I mean, did we get a better sense of exactly how intensive this is going to be?
Anytime the jury is there, the former president needs to be in court as well. The judge made that clear. So if there's something outside the jury's presence, some kind of hearing, perhaps Trump can skip that. But by and large, the judge fully expects that Donald Trump is going to be in court. And that conflicted with a request from his attorneys. And this seemed bound to happen, given how the defense has complained that the trial is getting in the way of the campaign trail over the next several weeks. Trump wanted to attend the U.S. Supreme Court arguments when he is going to argue next week about presidential immunity. And the judge said it is a big deal to argue before the U.S. Supreme Court, but he said being a criminal defendant on trial in New York is also a big deal, and he expects Trump to be here.
Well, and so then in the afternoon, kind of the real stars of the show showed up, which is the potential jurors, right? This huge jury pool that they're now going to try to sift through. I mean, what did we learn about the cross-section of people and sort of, I guess, what prosecutors and defense are going after here? Because you're not going to find people who just haven't heard of this defendant.
Yeah, the issue isn't, Brad, whether you've heard of Donald Trump. Who hasn't? He is one of the most famous people on the planet. The issue is whether you can be fair and impartial. And there was one woman, she's in her 30s. She lives in Harlem. She works at retail. And she answered yes to a question on the questionnaire that asked whether she had strong views about the former president that could interfere with her ability to be fair and impartial. And the judge excused her right away. But there was one guy, a bookseller from the Upper West Side, who said that he believes everyone, a sitting president, a former president, a janitor, is entitled to be in court, and no one is above the law. And so he was allowed to stay on the jury pool. And what an interesting cross-section of people, Brad, who showed up with their jury summons to court. The oncology nurse, the bookseller from the Upper West Side, a woman who works at Bloomingdale's, someone who works as an attorney who said his wife is pregnant with the couple's first child, and none of them said that they put Donald Trump at the center of their lives. Nobody had read his books. Nobody said they attended one of his rallies. Nobody said they attended a rally anti-Trump either. These are people, ordinary folks who have jobs, who have lives, and who potentially could be asked to sit in judgment of their former president.
Yeah, very different than sort of the crowds that gather outside these courthouses. And yet this cross-section you're referring to, probably a better indication of how most Americans have been dealing with this throughout the years. All right, Aaron Katursky from Outside Court, thanks so much.